Here's a sentence I did not expect to be saying in 2026. The British economy might be doing rather well. I know, give it a moment. For 3 years, it's been the same story. Prices up, growth flat, everyone a bit fed up. So when the numbers start pointing the other way, during a war that shut off one of the world's biggest oil routes, no less, it's worth asking what on earth is going on. There's a real chance Britain could be stumbling into a recovery almost by accident. The question is whether it can avoid tripping over its own feet on the way out. And I'll keep this practical. What it actually means for your mortgage, your pay packet, and your savings, not just the numbers on a chart. Start with the figures that, by every rule in the book, should be climbing. There's been a war between Iran and the United States, and the Straits of Hormuz, the bit of the sea that carries about a fifth of the world's oil and gas, has been effectively shut. Last time energy got this dear this fast, in 2022, inflation hit double digits and stayed long enough to ruin everyone's year. This time, inflation is sat at 2.8% in May, unchanged, as flat as a pancake. Petrol and transport prices are way up, but cheaper food has cancelled it out. It's the Sherlock Holmes clue. The dog that didn't bark. The thing that should have happened didn't. And crucially, wages haven't spiraled to chase prices the way they did in 2022. The practical upshot here is the bit you'll feel directly. With inflation behaving itself, the Bank of England has cover to keep cutting interest rates potentially. For anyone on a tracker or waiting for a fixed mortgage deal to come down, the conditions are better than they've been in about 2 years. This is not a promise, but the door is pushing open, it seems. Next, growth. The economy grew 0.6% in the first 3 months of the year, which sounds modest until you learn forecasters had penciled in about half that after 3 years of being gloomy and being right. And here's the part that'll annoy the neighbours. On the same months, the Eurozone shrank, Germany barely twitched, and France went backwards. Britain outgrew a lot of them. Not a sentence we've had much cause to use lately. Now, the caveats, because there's always caveats. April dipped. The war will drag on in the figures, and the big forecasters have trimmed the year. So this isn't a boom. It's an economy just being a bit less rubbish than expected, which, after the decade we've had, counts as pretty thrilling. One thing to keep in perspective, a better UK economy doesn't automatically mean a better FTSE. Most big London-listed firms earn their money abroad, so they march to the world's tune, not to ours. The cheap-looking UK stock market and the perkier UK economy are really just two different stories. It's tempting to muddle them, but probably best not to. Now, the jobs market. This is where it gets genuinely mixed. Good news first is unemployment ticked down last quarter to 5%, and for once wages are rising faster than prices. So the average worker is slowly getting better off, rather than just watching their pay packet evaporate. If you're in work and do a review, that is a useful fact to have in your back pocket. Now the less good bit. Firms are advertising fewer jobs than at any time since 2021, and youth unemployment is the worst in over a decade. So if you've got a job, you're pretty much all right at the moment. If you're hunting for one, it's genuinely harder out there. And it's not you, it's the market. But here's the asterisk, and it's a big one. The survey these numbers come from, by the ONS's own admission, are not really that reliable at the moment. Not enough people are answering it. They've essentially slapped a handle with care label on their own data, which is awkward because we're about to lean on it for the most important part of the whole story, productivity. Stay with me because this one is the one that actually really matters. Productivity is just simply how much we produce for each hour we work, the closest thing economics has to a kind of magic money tree. When it rises, everyone can earn more without prices having to rise too. And in Britain, it's been flat on its back for over a decade, growing at about 0.2% a year against a long-run norm nearer 2%. Economists call this the productivity puzzle, which is the academic way of saying we haven't the foggiest idea of what's going on. Now it's ticked up. Great. With two catches. First, we calculate it from those same wobbly job figures, so depending on how you measure productivity, it's either barely moved or it's jumped. The answers don't really agree at the moment. Second, If it's real, nobody can really fully explain it. So in the grand British tradition, there are some theories and there are some shrugs. Theory 1, AI. Artificial intelligence is helping firms get more done with the same staff because the software now handles lots of the boring bits. It's plausible, it's very unproven. Theory 2, and this is my favourite because it's sort of grim. For years, cheap borrowing kept barely alive zombie firms shuffling along. Now money's expensive again, the weak ones are going under, and the survivors happen to be the efficient ones. This means the average goes up. Not because anyone got better, but it's because the worst have been weeded out by higher rates. Productivity by elimination. Theory 3. It's a measurement wrinkle and we're all getting excited about a rounding error. Why care? Well, because sustained productivity growth is the one thing that lets wages rise without setting off inflation again. If it's real, it's the foundation everything else is built on. It's a rounding error, the foundation's built on sand. Right now, the most important number in the economy has perked up, and the experts are all squinting at it, going, Now, forget the headlines for a second. One figure tells you whether life is actually getting better. GDP per head. How much richer the average person is once you account for the growing population. This one's been a national embarrassment. In 2023, it fell, meaning the country was technically growing while you personally were getting poorer. It's a neat trick and it's not a fun one. Early in 2026 though, it rose, up nearly 1% on the year. If you add wages finally beating prices, and the average Briton is, for the first time in ages, a little bit better off. Not rich, just a little bit less skint. Probably take it for now. If you've been feeling a fraction less squeezed lately, that's not in your head, it's the first time in 3 years the numbers actually agree with you. What you do with that breathing room is your call, but it's potentially real breathing room. So where's the catch? There's always a catch. It's the government's bank balance. National debt is about 94% of everything the country produces in a year, a level last seen in probably the early 1960s. Deficit shrinking, which is real progress, but the Chancellor's cushion against her own rules is wafer thin. So, a private economy doing better, balanced on public finances with no slack at all. That's why what happens next is everything, and we're at a fork in the road. Path 1, spend freely to keep everyone happy, feels nice, leads to more borrowing, inflation comes back, rates stay high, and the fragile job market tips over finally. We've been here before. Path 2, hold spending, let the debt fall, give the bank room to cut, lower rates, more investment, better productivity, and it compounds. It's really boring, it's really effective. And then there's tax, real pressure to raise it to plug the gap, and the danger is timing. Taxing work and investment just as the economy finds its feet is like yanking the tablecloth to test whether the plates stay put. Sometimes they do, mostly you're sweeping up the floor. The Honest watch this space. Keep an eye out for the autumn budget, because if tax goes up, income or capital gains tax, it changes the maths a lot on household decisions. We'll obviously dig into that here when it lands. So, miracle or mirage? Honestly, neither yet. Britain hasn't engineered a recovery so much as dodged a disaster, with a few things going right at once. Whether the government can claim the credit is a lovely pub argument, and not really the point. The point is this: the recovery is real, but it's held together with tape. Shaky data, a cooling jobs market, and a productivity bounce nobody can explain. The next few decisions will show us whether this is the surprise comeback of the decade or one of more false dawn for the collection. Britain may be about to blunder into recovery. Whether it blunders straight back out again, well, that's the bit worth watching. If that was useful, subscribe. I do this every week, making sense of what's happening to your money, and for the longer conversations behind the headlines, the Mouthy Money podcast is linked below. I'll see you in the next one.